Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. I am awake, which means you guys have to be very awake. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, I bear witness there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is his last and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. As we say together in Arabic, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the quality of your life is actually measured by the quality of your relationships. I'll say that again. The quality of your life is measured by the quality of your relationships. And your families are the yardstick, therefore, with which you can measure the quality of your life. So think about this for a minute. You've got a new couple, newly married, happily in love. They're so happy together. They enjoy being each other's presence, right? They come home, they can't wait to see each other. Or maybe it's when you're holding that newborn baby in your arms and you're looking down and you're counting their tiny little fingers and their tiny little toes, right? And you have that moment where you lock eyes for the very first time after they're born. Or maybe it's that day where you have a conversation with a friend and the food is perfect, the weather is perfect, the memory is perfect. In all of these situations, life feels beautiful, right? It feels wonderful. But then 3 weeks later, that baby has colic. It cries all night long. You do not sleep. Months in, you wonder if you're ever going to be the same person again. You have that child that's so cute now, and they grow up to be a teenager. They slam the door in your face and say, I hate you. You don't understand anything. Go away from me. It's that spouse who puts their clothes just outside the laundry basket on the floor. I'm not saying which gender, by the way. I'm just saying. It's arguing over who's going to unload the dishwasher. It's your turn to change the baby's diaper. Who's going to clean the toilet before the guests come over? And then all of a sudden, life feels different. But the quality with which you come back to, with which you deal with over and over again, it's going to have an impact on how you feel. And so it's one of the reasons why I've been so passionate about helping people in their relationships, because I know if their relationship can get a little bit better, then I know their life is going to get that much better. And when you improve one relationship, now you have energy to improve the next relationship. And we have this beautiful ripple effect in our lives. But going a little bit further than that, I'll come back to this second, is that the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, as you all know, that the best of you are the best to your family, and I'm the best to mine. Which means that when you invest your energy in a relationship to be the best version of yourself, and is that something we ever arrive at? Not quite, right? Because we're always growing and changing, and life is moving us around. Kids are growing and they're changing. You're going through different life phases as adults. We're always having to work and move. But that the goal is that your relationships aren't just a measuring stick for your quality of life, but also your spiritual state. And so there's a spiritual element, a faith element that is put into improving your relationship. I'm used to having a clicker, so I'm going to have to remember to scroll. There was an interesting study that was done where 14,000 people were surveyed. And they were asking them, and they were looking to discover the correlation between relationships and emotional and physical well-being. Okay, so relationships and the quality of those relationships and one's emotional and physical well-being. And what they found was that for adolescents and the elderly, so the two opposite ends of a spectrum in terms of, our lifespan age, that the most important thing for emotional well-being and physical well-being was actually a very large social network. So anybody in here have teenagers? Right, social life is top priority. And parents sometimes are like, what about the family? What about the family? But actually, they need that. They need lots of social engagements, lots of gatherings, lots of parties. Who has aging parents? I think almost all of us in this room, right? Even though, interesting enough, you find sometimes due to illness and physical limitations and things like that, the elderly aren't engaged as much with the outside world. According to this study, if they had access to a large group, say coming to the masjid, their quality of life is higher. But for the middle range, they said the 30s to 50s. I say late 20s if you get married. So from the time you're married until these late 50s, the most important indicator of the emotional well-being and physical well-being in this group out of 14,000 people was the quality of their relationships in their life. That's a very significant statement. the quality, so not the quantity. So the middle years, you're busy, right? We're raising children, we're running here and there. We don't have time for lots and lots and lots of people. But the few that we have, your spouses, and your kids, your family, your closest group of friends, those have to be quality in order for your emotional and physical well-being, according to this study, to be good. And this was the hadith that I mentioned. So just tying in, I kind of did it backward, the spiritual element of the importance of relationships. But here's where I kind of want to take this into a turn. What if the way you're showing up in your relationships isn't good enough? And what I mean by that is that you can love your spouse, your children, you can love your parents, you can love friends, siblings, you can love them. But love, in terms of the idea of love, isn't enough. Love on its own isn't enough. And I think if I ask everyone in this room to think of one person in your life who's very significant to you throughout your life, who has hurt you, I know that everyone in this room can think of at least one person. It could be your parents, it could be one of your siblings, it could be one of your extended family, it could be someone that was really close to you in a social network and they've hurt you. Everybody here has been hurt by someone who says, I love you. Now, taking abuse aside, because this is a different category, it's the parent who loves you but still really hurt you. And as an adult, now you're figuring all this stuff out and you're healing from it. They had no idea, right? So you can love someone. So if that has happened to you, chances are there's someone in your life right now who unintentionally you might be hurting, even though you love them. So what do we do with that? What do we do with that idea? What do we do with that? It's kind of scary. Like, oh, wait, I thought I was a fantastic parent. I thought I was a great spouse. Well, there are some tips we're going to go through later to help you answer that question. But ultimately, the most important thing to ask is, how can I be better to the people that I love? How can I show up better? How can I connect better? And why should I put in the time and the effort? What did we say that the Prophet ﷺ said? The best of you are the best to your family. So ultimately, the closer you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we're going to come to, the more effort you will make with people. So I've divided this particular training into two sections. First, I'm going to lay down 5 beliefs. And then second, some specific actions, some specific tips, the kind of like, okay, but what do I do kind of things. Now, where did I get these 5 beliefs from that I'm going to share with you? Over the past 10 years, as she said in the beginning, I've been working with couples, I've been working with parents. Like right now, my coaching program, I have 2 parents and I'm working with them regarding their teenagers. So lots of experience working with parents to their kids, lots of experience working with couples or wives individually. And over the years, there were certain ideas, certain principles that I came back to over and over and over again, things that made the most difference. Okay, so there are certain things that they're good nuggets, but there are certain core foundational pieces that if you're missing them, you won't be able to implement general tips or general advice. And that's why I have here. So those books, for example, like How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen, and then there's Your Teen Will Listen, and the 7 Habits of Highly Successful Families, all of these things are wonderful. But from where I stand when it comes together, there are certain things that if they're not present, these other things won't stick. They won't last in the relationship. So that's where these 5 beliefs are going to come from and how they're going to be presented. So let's start with the first one. The first key belief is that love is giving. Or maybe you've heard it sometimes in the phrase that love is in action, or it's a verb. How many of you have heard this idea that love is a verb? Anyone? One person, okay. So the idea behind this is that in order to have a loving relationship, a core belief has to be that when you love someone, you are going to take action and do loving things for them. Love, when you think about it, isn't an idea, right? You don't think, I love this person on its own. You have to show it, right? Or the other person would never feel it. right? If I say that I love you and I love you so much, but I never do anything nice for you, do you believe me? No. So love is about giving. Love is an action. To me, this is one of the most important foundations for any relationship, period. It is where you come into it not asking, well, what are you going to give to me? It's, what can I give to you? How can I show up for you today? How can I nurture you today? How can I support you today? How can I be there for you today? And as parents with kids, this is very easy to do from the ages of 0 to 2.5. Right? You hold the baby, you cuddle them, oh, you're crying, oh, okay, you give them everything. And suddenly they turn 3 and they start talking. And what happens to our mentality? I said, just sit down. I said, stop this. And we start yelling and we start getting angry at these little people who have no self-control while we lose all of our self-control. It's really funny how weird we are as parents. We literally expect our kids to be perfect while we lose our stuff. Fascinating psychology. But as parents, I hear so much about, I put food on this table for you. I put a roof over your head. You should be grateful to me. Wow. I thought Allah gave these kids to you as a gift. I thought they were a blessing, a form of your provision. Suddenly parents look at their kids as, you should obey me. You should do what I say. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, there's no discipline in the family, but it's the attitude, it's the energy. So those of you who have children, you have to ask yourself, what energy are you showing up with your kids? Do you expect them to serve you and expect to give to you and expect to listen to you and be perfect? Or do you think, how can I love this child today? How can I nurture their iman today? How can I support them through this temper tantrum, whether they are 3, 7, 16, whatever? We have them as adults, yes or no? Okay, we all have our moments, okay? It's giving. Love is giving. With your spouse, same thing. Do you come home and expect them to just give to you because you exist? Or do you think, how can I come and make their day better? How can I support them? How can I show them that I love them? Do I even know what makes them feel most loved? If this right here, if we're missing this part of love is an action, love is shown through the things we do, and yes, also the things we say, but has to be matched with the action, then all the other stuff is not going to stick. You following me? So it's an action. And to go further with that is this hadith that was narrated, where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that my love, so you want Allah to love you, my love is obligatory for those who love each other for my sake, sit together for my sake, visit each other for my sake, and who spend on each other for my sake. So Allah's love is obligatory on you if you take what? Starts with an A. Actions. Thank you. Someone's awake in the back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said he will love you, but it's not the idea of something you did, it's that you did it. You took your money and you spent it. You got in the car, you drove, and you sat. Right? You specifically nurtured a relationship with another person for his sake. Allah will love you when you take action. So when I say that love is about giving and about giving and about giving, someone's probably thinking in their head, yeah, but well, what about me? What if I'm giving? Well, what's my spouse going to give me? Well, are my kids ever going to give me something back? I would love to talk about that another time, about fear-based loving, but sticking for the moment. In this example where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying he will love us if we give, someone is the recipient of these things, right? I'm sitting with you, I'm donating to someone, right? I'm nurturing a relationship with somebody. Someone is definitely the recipient. So of course, in a healthy relationship, when you give to those you love, eventually they will give back. In a healthy relationship, they will. With children, you deposit, and at some point, they decide that they will give back to you. You don't have to compel them. You don't have to threaten them. You don't have to shame them. When you give love and you consistently nurture them, it won't even be a question. They will want to desire to do loving actions for you. And I think at the end of the day, that's what most of us really want. So the first belief is that love equals or? Good, all right. Key belief number 2 I give my best to those who I love. This is really important. How many of you, when you come to the masjid, it's Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing? Alhamdulillah, bikhair. Let me get that chair for you. No, let me get it. Such a no problem. Right? And we're all just so nice. And then you go home and it's like, Assalamu alaikum, is dinner ready? Or why is this mess on the kitchen? That's me. Why is there a mess on the floor? That would be me. Right? Those are me in my moments, right? But we come in public spaces, we go to work, we interact with friends, and we're so lovely. We put our best foot forward, we look good, we smell nice, we're smiling, our adab is mashallah. But what about at home? What about at home with the people that we love? What about at home with the people who rely on us? Like our kids. Our kids can't be like, I don't like my parents this week, let me go get some new ones. They're stuck with us. Right? They don't have another option. So the idea here is it's so important. If you want to have a healthy, established home and a system, you have to think, how can I give my best? Unfortunately, my experience is that we reserve our best for strangers and acquaintances, and we give our worst to our families. Now, when I say this, I am not saying you have to be perfect, because I'm not perfect. I don't know anybody that is. We all have our quirks and our baggage and our weird stuff. We all have grumpy days. Hangry is real. In a family, it should be a safe place to mess up. It should be a safe place to have a bad day. That's part of love, and that's part of close relationships, right? It should be a place where your kid can fall apart. And you're like, it's okay. I get it. You didn't sleep, you're tired, no problem. It's a place where your spouse is going to lose their temper when they're driving on their freeway for a minute. Those things are okay. But it's about the intention of, how do I think about who I'm going to be in my home? So I'll give you an example. I have this rule. I tend to host a lot because I'm one of those people that puts myself through that, and I like to have people over. So I have a rule that anything I'm willing to do for guests, I have to also do for my family. So I don't host guests every day, so I don't have the expectation I'm going to treat my own family like guests every day. But once in a while, how do you clean the house when you have guests coming over? Well, how about I clean the house like that just for my family? What kind of food do you cook when guests are coming over? How do you arrange it? Well, let me do that for my family once in a while. The little hand towel that folds and gets laid nicely by the sink before the guests come over. Let me do that for my family once in a while. The nice smelling soaps that people put out when guests are coming over. Well, let me do that for my family once in a while. Your family and the people closest to you, they deserve your best before anybody else. So Ramadan is coming. I know a lot of you will be hosting people for iftar. You will be scrubbing and cleaning and getting the cobwebs off the ceiling, and you will be doing everything. Maybe think about, let me do that first for my family. Before any other guest comes, my family is going to have the royal treatment. Why? Because you love them. We don't want it to be just for the strangers. The Prophet ﷺ said he's the best to his family. I imagine what that would be like. We all love the Prophet ﷺ from the things that we know about him. We were not even there, and we love him and how he treated people. What must it have been like to be with him in the most private spaces of his home, the conversations, the adab, the manners? So this is something for us to strive for. Give your best to your family first. Your best. And again, every day you come home from work or the kids or school or driving, yeah, you're all tired. That's okay. But once every couple of weeks, go all out. With your children, go all out. With your spouses, go all out. But have this mentality again that love is giving, and it's also giving your best. And I have the hadith here as a reminder that the Prophet ﷺ said, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So if you want certain things from your spouse, be the first to do it. If you want certain things from your children, role model it now. Give them 20 years, maybe less, but give them time. Give them time. It's a long journey. Give them time, and it will come back to you. But give first what you want to receive. And I have a question here, because sometimes in our emotions, when I say that give your best, and there's someone that's thinking in their head, and they'll always come to me and I go, yeah, but what if my kids are, they're not really respectful right now. They're so disrespectful to me. Or you know what? My spouse is right? And the list comes out. And I said, well, so why should you do these things? When people, your kids don't feel like they deserve your best. Your spouse right now, you don't feel like they deserve your best. At least the guests that come over say thank you and they're appreciative. You do it because that's the kind of person you want to be. If we all give based on what I call transactional giving, you earn it from me, where would we be? And where are we? When we only give based on the transaction we're going to get back. I gave you this, well, you gave me this. Well, I gave you that yesterday, so you do this for me today. That's not love. That's bargaining. And that doesn't allow relationships to go deeper. So I want you to think about that. Whatever you want to see from your spouse, your family, your community, be that person first. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. But you have to give your best. All right, key belief number 3. I will make space for meaningful conversations. It is interesting, specifically for the parents, I'll start with that, with children, that once kids can talk and express themselves, you have the opportunity to have meaningful discussions with them. But what I've learned is that for the parents, what happens is the only conversations kids have are about chores, schoolwork, and what they did wrong. Yeah, I see some smiles and nods like, yeah, guilty, right? And of course, on a weekly basis, it's school, chores, and can you please stop fighting with your sibling? Could you please put your socks away? Why is this on the counter? That's always me, the counter, right? Of course, this is life, right? Day-to-day life is that we're going to be busy, we're going to be talking to each other, but it is crucial that you make space to have meaningful conversations. If that is every night at the dinner table, if that's before tucking kids in, if it's once a week, and I'm going to come to that later, when you're going out with them, if it's when you're driving in the car, there has to be a space where you either are quiet enough, long enough for them to start talking, right? People often say, yeah, I get in the car and my kids don't want to talk. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, they don't want to talk because they don't want to report to you what they did that day. But meaningful conversations when people come to life. It's when you talk about an interesting film or a cute show that you watched or something beautiful you saw, or you listen intently to what they tell you some kid at school did and how they were going on and on about it, and you listen carefully and what did you think about that? How'd that make you feel? And you're just listening and you're present. With spouses, it's the same thing. What is your spouse's dreams right now? What are their aspirations? What are they afraid of? What's their burden? Because you all have them. But meaningful conversation is something that you plan. It's something that you develop. It becomes a habit, but it has to be nurtured and it has to be started. If right now I ask you, what are the 3 things that are most important to your spouse right now, and you don't know that answer, that's an invitation. What's the one thing you wish you could do in the next 5 years? Some of you are like, I don't know the answer to that myself. No problem. Okay, let's talk, right? But just about everybody has ideas and dreams and goals. All of us are struggling with something. There's this guy at work and I can't stand working with him. It's the sister who is putting all the blame on you for the treatment of how your mom's care is at the hospital. Everybody's got some kind of a test. So meaningful conversations in a family system are something that are developed, they're planned, they're nurtured, and they're regular. And you have to have that belief that you love someone enough that you're going to make a space for them. Because don't you want to know what your kids are really thinking? Don't you want to know what they're scared of that they haven't told you? Do you want to know what they really think of you? Some of you are like, no. I ask my kids, especially my teenagers. And so again, from the Prophet ﷺ, there's this example, which we've all heard, where it's narrated from Anas that he said that the Prophet ﷺ used to spend time with us to the extent that he said to my young brother, "O father of Omer, what did the little birdie do?" And he was taking time to ask about his little pet bird and what he was doing. And of course, I think we know later the little bird died. For a young boy, that's a meaningful conversation. When kids start talking on and on about like little things, that's their world. That's the moment where they're inviting you into their world. And what do? That's interesting. Hold on, I got a text message. Okay, yeah, great. That's really great. I'm glad to hear that you did that at school. Oh, by the way, did you put your shoes away? No? Okay, can you go put your shoes away? Where's your backpack? Get your schoolwork out. Okay, that's great. You missed an opportunity. You missed a window. And when that opportunity is gone, it's gone. So meaningful conversations, develop that as a habit. And we'll talk a little bit later about how. Oh yeah, here, really important, interesting statistic here I'd like to read to you. 89% of Americans say that during their last social interaction, they took out, no surprise, a phone. And 82% said it deteriorated the conversation they were in. If you put a cell phone into a social interaction, it does two things. First, it decreases the quality of what you talk about, because you talk about things where you won't mind being interrupted, which makes sense. And secondly, it decreases the empathic connection that people feel towards each other. This is from author Sherry Turkle. You know what's even more interesting? Where's my phone? Who has a phone out? Can I borrow your phone? How many of you have your phones out? I'm going to pick on you now. I went to a youth conference a couple weeks back in Canada, and the first thing I did when we were talking about social media is have all the kids put their arms in there if they had their phone, then I made them turn it off and put it away where they couldn't even feel it. 15 minutes they were squirming, but by 40 minutes, they were so engaged. So people take phones and you're talking to someone and you're like, yeah, no problem. Let's continue talking. So it's like, if I put it face down, is it better? You're important now. I turned it face down. So we're at the dinner table and we're eating, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to get that. Go ahead, you were saying? But where's your mind for a second still? I'm not going to. But what the study is saying, that as long as you see this thing in my hand, on the table, next to me on the couch, our relationship at that moment, our connection, is not as sound. It's not high quality. Just by it being physically visible. And I would go further and say also if you can feel it. Because a lot of people wear these in their pockets, zzz, 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 right? And you're like, yeah, so what were you saying? You had a great day, zzz, yeah, at school, zzz, yeah, hold on, just one second. Yeah, go ahead, right? We are so interrupted. God, that's so exhausting. Be the person that no one can reach you on for 5 hours except like your mom, your dad, and your kids. As long as it's out, like really get this. As long as it's physically visible to another person that you're in space with, your connection is less. What's the cost of that, do you think, in 10 years of parenting, in 10 years of your marriage? That most of your quality time at the dinner table or in the car when you have that quiet with each other, in your bedroom when it's on the sheet or next to you on the nightstand, what are we losing? And right now, we don't think it's a big deal because we're not even seeing what we're missing out on, because we're not paying attention to how much we're missing because we're still focused on this thing. I hate these things. So, interesting study to consider. You may continue to hold this now if you don't feel too embarrassed to do so. So, a habit, make meaningful space for conversations, but definitely put your phones away. And if you want your kids' attention, please remember from now, you're their role model. All right, key belief number 4. Actually, what did I have here? Oh yeah, let me go back to this for a second. Let's go back to meaningful conversations. Sometimes I have people come to me and they're like, Sister Megan, I'm not really the deep type. I'm not an emotional kind of guy. I'm not a deep, intimate type of woman. Okay, sorry to hear that. Today's your day. You want these passionate marriages and deep family connection. You're going to have to get a little uncomfortable because meaningful connection happens not just with the beautiful dialogue, but when we push through the uncomfortable stuff. And relationships are nothing else than huge personal development invitations. They are a path, a direct pathway to our spiritual growth. Why else is marriage a sunnah? There's a lot of practical reasons we can think about it, but the moment you get married is the moment where you start to meet your actual self. Because your parents and your siblings you grew up with have found ways to sort of accommodate you, right? Every family has its way. The eldest does this attitude, the youngest is the baby, right? Everybody has their role to play. But when you get married, suddenly you see yourself because someone's in front of you going, I don't like this about you. Yeah, you can't do that. This is not fair. This is not just. This isn't very kind. And you're like, I was perfect until I met you. But it's the other way around. That's how we act, right? Like, I was perfect until I met you. But the reality is that we are mirrors for each other. We all know that. So marriages are a place where you're going to have to get uncomfortable. You don't have to. You don't have to go deep. You don't have to discuss your feelings. You don't have to discuss your dreams or your fears. That's fine. If you don't mind living a shallow relationship for the next 45 years and losing passion after the first 2 years of marriage, that's your choice. I know that sounds harsh. But after 10 years of working with couples, that's the reality. A marriage that's awesome cannot be sustained if we all want to be comfortable. We have to be willing to go, this is really hard for me to say right now, but I feel really insecure about this. We have to be able to go deeper. We have to be more vulnerable. With your kids, I hear parents all the time saying, can you come and talk to my kids? Can you please talk to them about A, B, and C? And I'm like, why don't you talk to them? Oh, I can't do that. I'm too uncomfortable. Okay. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So if nobody ever said to you before that this is what relationships are about, nice to meet you. And so if your spouse isn't going to be your personal development mirror, you will have a child if you are blessed to have children. One of them will be mini you, and that's the one that will drive you up the wall the most because you will be so alike. You just won't know it for a while, but they are you. And since you don't really like you, you're not going to have an easy time with that part of you. Your kids are pre-programmed for your spiritual development. They are pre-programmed for your spiritual growth. But what do we do with our kids? We shame them, we yell at them. Obey me, you should listen to me, you should respect me. With that tone and with those faces and a lot scarier voice. I know I've had my moments where I've learned through the years, like, this is not right. Why am I doing this? I don't like to be treated like this. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that everything in this life is a test. Okay, and either it's a good thing and we're grateful, or it's a difficult thing and we're patient. Right now, this child is part of my test. And Allah is watching me. How are you going to handle this? Fortunately for us, Tawbah exists. But it is very important to understand that you're going to have to be a little bit uncomfortable. And that's okay. You don't have to like the conversation. It doesn't have to feel good at first. It doesn't have to be natural. Over time, you will get better. You will get better at expressing yourself. You'll get better at saying the things that you thought were really hard before. They will become more natural. You have to start somewhere. So hopefully this is an invitation for meaningful conversation. Key belief number 4, and I think I kind of now touched upon this, is that I respect others by taking responsibility for my own faults. And I'll just put this up here. Do you take responsibility for your faults? With your spouse, with your children, with anybody? Do you say sorry? Sorry, I lost my temper earlier. I was tired. I apologize for that. I shouldn't have raised my voice at you. I'm sorry that I snapped at you. I had a really stressful day. Maybe we can talk about it later. I shouldn't have snapped at you. I believe that respect belongs to every single person in a family. I respect my 4-year-old, and I respect my 7-year-old, and I respect my 15-year-old. I respect my 16-year-old. She's about this tall now. I respect my husband. He's up here. And I also expect in return that my husband's going to respect me, that my teenagers are learning and developing what respect looks like, that my 7-year-old is getting the idea, but it's going to be a while. My 4-year-old, definitely not. That's why when you pray, they throw stuff at you and climb on you, and they do all kinds of crazy stuff because they don't understand that yet. Because 4-year-olds don't give me respect. I role model that for my 4-year-old, but I respect them. Respect belongs to everyone in the family. Everyone. The hierarchy of stuff, it's equal when it comes to respect. We have to treat each other respectfully, whether they're little, no matter your position, and even more so, sorry, I don't know why that happens, even more so if we're in an authority position. it's even more important that you respect people that are under your care. Because when somebody who you rely on disrespects you, doesn't value your feelings or your input, that's a very vulnerable and scary place to be. And some of you know what that feels like. Respect is essential, and it belongs to everyone. You can't say, I love you, if you don't respect me. You can't say you love your spouse if you don't respect them. They go together. And that goes back to our actions. So really thinking deeply. And so part of respect is taking responsibility. Again, we are families. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. Like I said, hangry is real. We're going to have a bad day, right? Things are going to happen. That's okay. It is okay not to be perfect. It is okay to mess up. It is a long journey. But what's not okay when you hurt someone is not saying, I'm sorry. What's not okay is not being willing to listen to their perspective and how they feel. You don't even have to agree with someone else's perspective, but you have to respect their feelings. Sometimes you hear people say, well, I wouldn't react like this in that situation. That's nice, but they did. Right? So we have to be able to say, sorry, I messed up, whether they're this big or they're this big. Respect is, belongs to everyone, and apologizing does as well. Oh, here's a little bonus question for you. Whenever there's conflict where things have kind of exploded a bit, I ask each person to ask an important question. Whenever there's conflict, whether it's with a child or with spouses, it's usually you're focused on what the other person did. But when you focus on what the other person has done, you are simmering in your anger, your disappointment, your hurt, your feelings, your frustration. Nothing is changing. So remember in the beginning when I said love is giving? You can see how this is sort of building, right? You give your best to your family. Well, here's a great question to ask. What part of this stress am I responsible for creating? Because in any situation between two individuals, two adults, two children, a child and an adult, there are two people. And even if you aren't doing something wrong, it doesn't mean that you haven't contributed something to what's created a stressful situation. When you ask a question like this, you become very resourceful very quickly. What part of this stress am I responsible for? This is one of the best things that I ever learned. And it's one of the best things that I've seen change things. So, you're having an argument with one of your kids, it gets out of hand, everybody's upset, and you're thinking about their behavior, and I say, no, turn it around, go, okay, what part of this am I responsible for? You were tired. You're hungry. You're stressed out from work. You're upset by a phone call. Wait, what else is going on that you contributed? You snapped. You raised your voice. You cut them off. You didn't listen. Right? You didn't try to understand. You start thinking resourcefully. When you think resourcefully, you get to come back and say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry that, I've hurt your feelings. I've had a bit of a stressful day. This is where we come back to this part again, right? What can I do? How can we make this better? And again, some of you I know are asking that question, but why should I have to be the one to go first? We've become 3-year-olds. Why does it have to be me? Why can't they go first and do it? Remember what I said in the beginning? None of you truly believe until you want for someone else what you want for yourself. Be that person, and you will have a lot more reward. So there's a bonus question to ask. And here I just had a list of harder but more honest answers to the questions. So when you ask the question of what part of this stress am I responsible for, here's a list of things that people have said through the years and excuse me. This online one's pretty key. I've been online a lot and I'm not emotionally connected to my family. A lot of people are so engaged in their online world that their kids become like interruptions because you're so busy reading something that kids become interruptions and we snap. You're struggling with your amen. I mean, let's be real. We said in the beginning that your spiritual state can be best measured by how you treat your family. There's no way around that one. If you want to know how good of a Muslim you are, you see how you treat your family. There's like no shortcut. I don't care how many times a day someone prays or where they pray or what they recite. If you're not good to your family, if your family members wouldn't say good things about you, that's your litmus test right there. And so when we struggle with our iman, when our faith is weak, when we don't know our purpose in life, when we're really struggling in this area, of course it's going to come out in how we're treating other people. Because we're missing soul. Our hearts aren't engaged with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So of course, can we be surprised that our relationships are struggling, that our family's falling apart? That's why the most important relationship is always our one with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But so these were just some examples. And here's the last one. Key belief number 5, vulnerability is my strength around those that I love. Now, why did I come to vulnerability? I have this concept that I've been teaching for 10 years called fearless vulnerability. We do not like the V word. I understand. Vulnerability, when we hear that word, generally means to be in a position of weakness, right? The women and children were vulnerable, right? I was in a vulnerable position. Normally, when we use this word, it means that we are in a position of weakness. But vulnerability in a relationship is a strength. And it's a really important key belief. And here's why. Can you give love as an action without expectations of what's going to happen 10 minutes from now if you're not willing to be vulnerable? No, because you'll think, well, if I give to them, maybe they'll just keep taking. You know, there's that advice where women are told, don't praise your husband too much. He'll just get a big ego and he'll become arrogant. Or people tell men, you know, don't give too much to your wife because then she'll just keep wanting more and she'll never be satisfied. Keep her on a tight budget. It's don't hold your baby too much when they're born because you're going to spoil them. Let them cry in the crib or they're going to take advantage of you as they grow up. These are all fear-based, right? They're all fear-based. That's like the opposite of everything I know, right? So vulnerability is, you know what, you might not appreciate this for the next 25 days, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's the kind of person I want to be. I want Allah to be pleased with me. I want to try my best to give and give and give because I want to be a source of love and kindness. I'm going to say sorry. Well, you know what fear says? Well, if you apologize, they're going to use it against you. Not with a good person. Not with a person who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person whose iman is weak, yeah. An abusive person, yeah. A toxic person, yeah. But not a good person. When you apologize to a good person, heart's open, right? That's the opening. But you have to be vulnerable first to find that out. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there to find it out. All the beliefs rely on vulnerability. So I always tell people, you can open up any book you want on parenting and marriage. You can go to YouTube and watch millions of lectures on parenting and marriage. You could become like the smartest, whatever, like Google walking person on all the tips in marriage, all the tips in parenting. But if you don't have vulnerability as something you practice, you have a lot of information, you have no change. And so vulnerability, I always call it an art. It is not something most of us know how to do. And when I say that, it's oftentimes I'll have someone say, oh, I'm really vulnerable. I mean, I have no problem telling my husband this, and that. No, vulnerability isn't telling somebody what they're doing wrong. Vulnerability is telling them how awesome they are. Vulnerability is saying, you look good today. Vulnerability is saying, you know, I had a really nice thought of you last week and I wanted to share it with you. Vulnerability is saying, you know what, I really love the way you handle the kids right now. Vulnerability is saying, you know what, I really wasn't my best yesterday and I'm sorry. Vulnerability is more about compliments and more about giving and more about filling someone's cup than it is about saying how angry you are and how upset you are and what you don't like. Because that's the deep stuff. But this is where, again, the invitation is. The more vulnerable you are, the greater strength you have in a relationship. And so it's something you cultivate. So again, remember when I said get comfortable getting uncomfortable? Vulnerability used to be my kryptonite. I tell this story in some of the other lectures that I've done. Vulnerability, I thought I was one of those vulnerable people. I was not. I'm the opposite of vulnerable people. Until I started my own personal development journey, vulnerability was something I was deeply terrified of. And so I had to work really, really hard to get to a place where I could be at that level with my husband, or where appropriate with my children. Obviously, we don't let kids know everything about us, right? But that was something I had to work really hard at. And sometimes it's still really hard. Sometimes it's still really difficult. Confrontation or working through hard stuff, nobody likes that. But it's something that it comes a lot more naturally now because I've put so much effort into it and because I saw the fruits of that labor. Okay, so we covered that. So now let's do part 2. And this is sort of the actionable tips a little bit, and then after that we can do Q&A and discussion. And I wonder if she put both PowerPoints up here. Okay. So I kind of referenced this in the beginning, but when you want to establish any kind of a system in a family where you really know each other, you feel like you're connected to each other, this is such a great question. You can ask it to kids, you can ask it to your spouse. What makes you feel the most loved or respected by me? It is an awesome question. What makes you feel the most loved or the most respected by me? And everybody has an answer. And you know what's really beautiful about the answers? They're actually not complicated. It's funny that as human beings, we feel like relationships are so hard, and they are. Marriage is hard, parenting is hard. It is, it's a lot of work. But what actually makes us happy is very simple. And I tell this really cute story of this couple I worked with from Pakistan. The husband had signed him and his wife up for couples coaching once, and there's a lot of different examples I'd love to give from it, but the thing in the end where I asked him, listen, what's the one thing that you could do for your spouse that she could do for you on a weekly basis that would make you feel loved and respected? So it's not a daily thing, right? Sometimes it's a daily thing if it's small and simple, but just like once a week. And he said, you know what I really want? I just want to come home from work, come to the kitchen, and I want to find a bowl of fresh washed fruit sitting on the table. Oh, okay. Because, my wife's a great cook and everything, but I don't really care about the food. She's like, what? He's like, no, you're a great cook. He's like, no, really, it's fantastic. He goes, but what I really want that would just make me feel super loved is if I come home. He's like, she doesn't have to cut it. Just wash the fruit, stick it in a bowl, and leave it on the table. And I said, well, tell me more about this. This is interesting. And he said, well, when I was growing up as a kid, he said we were pretty poor, and we weren't able to afford a lot of fresh fruits and like really lush fruits and a lot of things that I really like. And he said, and so later in life, this became like a thing for me. He said, first of all, I like to be healthy. And he goes, and fruit is something I feel is healthy, but it also makes me feel wealthy because I didn't have it. And so as an act of love, the thing that would make me the most happy is actually this bowl of fresh fruit washed on the table. She's like, I can do that, And kid you not, he was so happy. It was so simple. And someone else, I asked there was a couple with some young kids and a baby, and when it came to the housework, there was this one husband who when he'd come home, he'd get really frustrated, why is the house a mess, whatever, and she's like, you try doing this with the 3 kids, right? She's like, let me leave you all alone for 3 days and let's see how the house looks, right? They were getting to that, and finally I said, listen, your wife has a baby, and everybody knows as long as you have a baby, you don't get to do anything but the baby, unless you ignore the baby. So yes, you can leave the baby in a crib to cry for 2 hours and do a lot of work, but fortunately your wife isn't that kind of a woman who wants to neglect your children. She wants to hold the baby and care for the baby and nurse the baby. And your toddlers also need attention. They need to do crafts and art, so it's going to be messy. He's like, okay. I go, but what's the one space in the house that if your wife cleared it off would make you feel good when you came home? He goes, okay, I just want a path from the front door, he's like, to the couch. And I just don't want any toys on the couch. She's like, I can do that. So, he's not going to get the best of the best. She's got 3 kids. My God, that's impossible. But she can do that. So she got a basket, and she would just chick things along the way, clear off the couch, puts the blanket and the pillows. 15 minutes before he came home, they were happy. I know people are looking at me like, come on, you don't know my relationship, but you don't know my family. It's not that simple. We really are that simple. You know how we always say the best things in life are? What's that? Simple, but there's another word. Best things in life are, starts with an F. Free. Not even expensive. The best things in life are free or simple, right? So when you ask this question, what makes you feel the most loved or respected by me, you will probably find something very doable. Something very doable. And you'd be surprised how simple it is. And with little kids, it's even sweeter. Because, well, it's, when you come home from work and you sit down with me and we do a puzzle together. Or I feel most loved when, you cuddle with me in bed before bedtime and you read me a story. Kids' answers are really, really sweet. And teenagers' answers are also extremely enlightening. Oh, okay, hold on. I need my other presentation, but I don't know where she may have put it. Megan's PowerPoint, 1, 2. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this opens up. I don't know how to use her computer. Okay, I see it. What do I do? All right. Nope, that was wrong. Wait, try this again. No, wait, that's part 1. Huh? I have Apple, you guys. I don't know what this is. Can you put it up? Or someone's welcome to come save me from this. Once you convert to Apple, you don't know how to do anything else. Oh, you have to download it first. Okay. Thank you. Oh, that's probably a little too big. Yeah, I think so. It's cutting off. Whatever is here, you see. That's perfect. Thank you. All right. Oh, okay. So we did that one. Okay, let's go on to bridge phrases. So bridge phrases, some people call them code words, but I like the term bridge phrase. I'm a huge fan of it. A bridge phrase, it's basically when there's tension, when there's frustration, when there's difficulty, how can you bridge your heart to somebody else's when you're not in the mood to talk? When you're not in the mood to work stuff out, when you just want space, when you're just grumpy, whatever it is. I call them a bridge phrase. For me, this simple phrase, it's not personal to you, was a game changer for me in my relationship, and then we taught it to the kids. Even my 7-year-old says, even now my 4-year-old says, it's not about you, with a screaming voice. And what this means is, let's say you're snapping, or you're grumpy, you're tired, you're whatever, and your spouse is like, hey, look, what's with the attitude? Okay, well, what do you mean, what's with my attitude? That could go down here really fast. Right? But instead, it's like, look, it's not personal to you. The moment you say that, the other person's like, okay, all right, it's not about me, and their heart opens. And then they're able to see you as a person who's having a really hard time, but they're not going to take it personal. If you don't say these kinds of phrases, can you blame your spouse or your kids for taking your attitude personal? No, because when you're in a space with someone who's not behaving nicely, you personalize it. Of course you do. Why are you treating me like this? What did I do for this? Why are you giving me this attitude? What did I do? And it starts. And then we have this argument. And the truth is, the argument's not even the real argument. It's not even the real problem. And 2 hours later, the real problem was just like, you're stressed out about something. So if you can learn this, it's not personal to you, right? Sometimes with women with monthly issues, PMS, things like this, it also comes in handy, right? When women are pregnant, their hormones are all over the place before, during, and after, whatever it is, it's not personal to you. Just leave me alone, I'm grumpy right now. I just don't want to talk. And you instantly bridge your heart with the other person, and the other person's like, okay, whatever, they just ignore you, right? So I've taught this to my kids, and sometimes you might be dealing with something that's a little bit stressful or emotional for me. Look, you guys, I'm just, nothing personal to you, I just don't really feel like talking right now. And then they're not hurt. But if I just kind of give them a cold energy while I'm in the kitchen and they're trying to talk, they're going to walk away hurt. But if I say, look, it's not personal to you, I need some space right now, they're like, yeah, okay, no problem. And we're good. So I call these bridge phrases. And every family can come up with their own. Oh, I don't have the other. We have a couple of them. My 7-year-old came up with this phrase last year, maybe a year before that. So with her little brother, when he's tired, he gets really challenging and would really bother her. So he'd be taking her stuff and, trying to get attention because he's wired. And so she came up with this phrase, the bird is pecking. And I'm like, what? The bird is pecking. She'd go like this. And that was her code phrase for, he's really difficult right now. Can you take him away? Because she didn't want to say something because then he would cry and his feelings would get hurt. It'd be like this whole thing. So she learned her own little bridge phrase, the bird is pecking, mama. Very, very distinct imagery she has there. But that has helped us. Another one we came up with was halipi. So there's hangry, but we also discovered there's halipi. What's halipi? Hungry and sleepy, right? It's not always hungry and angry, therefore you're angry. It's I'm hungry and I'm sleepy. Two bad combinations for most of us, right? Tired and starving, bad, right? So we have these little phrases. So even your kids will learn how to utilize them. My teenagers have learned this, it's not about you, or it's not personal to you phrase. It's made a huge difference. You know, they're growing, whatever. I'm like, hey, what's going on with the tone here? And it's like, look, it's not about you, okay? I'm just really stressed out about this math test. Okay. And what's awesome about it is now I know what they're going through. So bridge phrases are awesome tips. Tip number 3 just kind of brings in apologizing again. But whenever you apologize, you have to say what you're sorry for. You can't just be like, I'm sorry. Okay? Sorry for what? Right? When you say sorry, be specific what you're sorry for. Because when you're specific, you validate someone else's feelings. Right? I'm sorry I raised my voice at you. I'm sorry that I, threw away your stuff without asking. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what people have done, gone through. Right? But be specific, okay? Don't just do like, I'm sorry, but be specific what you're sorry for. Take relationship dates. This kind of comes as the practical solution for when I said develop meaningful conversation. I believe that families, you should have a date with everybody in your family. So I think spouses need time alone, and I think dads need time alone with each of their kids, and I think moms need time alone with each of their kids. It is awesome when you take out a kid alone and you spend time with them and you just hang out, what you will learn about your kid. And I've been doing this for a long time. Sometimes we don't get to it for a few months, but it's a lovely habit, and my kids look forward to it. Just recently, my 4-year-old, my 7-year-old is going to a Quran class, so I have a couple days a week where it's just him and I. Everyone else is gone. And so I took him out for breakfast a couple weekends ago, and he's like, can we do it again? I can't wait to go out with you. I want a date too. Like, he's so excited. Like, he can't wait to have this one-on-one time. So since my other 2 kids were young, this is what I've done. And we just like Cheesecake Factory, whatever, ice cream, nothing like complicated. Just go out wherever they want to go for dessert or breakfast. Just go out with them alone. No agenda. You're not there to lecture them or improve them as human beings. You're there to meet them. You're there to discuss with them. You're there to know them. And it's awesome. So as much as you can, schedule this time. Give each of you as spouses chances to go out with your kids individually, and of course as couples. It's really important. I should probably add in here dates with yourself too. Filling your own cup. Oh, a favorite, eye contact. So, interestingly enough, how many of you have ever gone to the grocery store and you have, hi, how are you? Did you find everything okay? Yeah, I'm great. How are you doing? I'm fine. And they're beeping, and thank you so much. Have a good day. And not once do they look at you. Not once. Like, they're talking, and not once did they actually look up and recognize that you have a human face. Like, you could have been standing there with a gorilla mask on and they wouldn't have seen it. And as I started paying attention to this, and I don't know if this is all cultures and stuff. Like, I've kind of picked up that, like, Americans specifically, we like to talk a lot, but we don't like to look at each other a lot. So I don't know if that's a global thing yet. I'd have to like test it out. But we like to talk, but we don't like to be vulnerable. Right? So we just, yeah, how you doing? It's great. We just, yeah, have a good day. That's great. But we don't like to look at each other. But in families, interesting if I asked you, when's the last time you made full eye contact with your spouse? I bet many of you are going to be like, and not when you're fighting. I bet many of you are going to be like, I have no idea. When's the last time you made full eye contact with your kids, not when you were lecturing them? It is interesting that you'll find that families are around each other, but we don't actually look at each other. And we all say that eyes are the windows to the soul. It's how we see each other. It's why with men and women, opposite gender, we don't gaze into each other's eyes. Like, we look at each other, we can talk, but it's why we just, that's why we kind of glance away. Because if you guys have probably all heard this study where they took strangers together, had them sit for 3 minutes and look in each other's eyes, and after that, they all reported feelings of falling in love. 3 minutes. So simple. Sit with your spouse 3 minutes. Just stare at each other. You'll be in love again. It's amazing. I've been to all these workshops where I do this with strangers, and you like hold hands with this other woman, and you just look at each other for 3 minutes. And sometimes I did one with 10, and everyone's like crying because it's so vulnerable and beautiful, and like the room is like full of emotion, and the men are like, dang, this is tough stuff. All we did was look in each other's eyes. Like there was no talking, there was no imagine your life speech. It was just some music playing somewhere, and we're just staring at each other. And the only thing they said was, get to know the soul in front of you. That was it. That was the only prompt. And people are crying, and they're hugging afterward. Like, what are we doing? It's because it's so powerful. So make eye contact a habit. Something I learned years ago, who has young kids in here, like 4, 5s, and 6s? Anybody? Okay. One of the really cute ways to do this with your kids is to play the staring contest. You guys all know that, right? We say, okay, we're going to stare at each other. Okay, ready, set, go. And whoever doesn't blink, it's the who blinks first loses. When you do that with your kids, they think they're playing a game. I want you just to look in their eyes. And I want you to focus on this soul. And I want you to think of like, I'm sending them love, I'm sending them love, I'm sending them love. It is so beautiful because you're like, wow, my kids' eyes. Like there's little people in front of us. And there's another game you can do. And it's something sometimes I have spouses do where I say, communicate your love for them without a word. And so with little kids, you can say, listen, I'm going to tell you something. It's a game. They're like, okay. And I want you to tell me when we're all done what you feel. And they're like, okay. Say, okay, I'm just going to look in your eyes. I'm going to tell you something. And I want you to concentrate really hard and tell me what you feel. I'm going to do this for 1 minute, okay? And they're like, okay. If you can do 30 seconds, that'd be great. But 1 minute. And in the end, what happens is they start giggling. They're like giggling as you do it. And they're like getting all squirmy and happy. And all you're doing is looking at and thinking, I love you, and I'll thank you for you. And we're just like, what did you feel? And they're like, oh, it felt good. And they're real shy and they're confused. Eye contact, it's really powerful. So there's a few games you can try. All right, tip number 6. Oh yeah, hugs and loving touch often. So we've all heard the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was talking to a man, and he said, I have 10 children and I never kissed any of them. And he said, whoever does not show mercy will not be shown mercy. This is so specific. I've never kissed any of the kids. That's so sad. And I know that everybody's different, right? Everybody's family you grew up in is different. Some families are like cuddle bugs, and other families, touch is very limited. It's like pat on the back, good job, son, good job, daughter. It's very minimal. That's okay. That's why we all have the opportunity to ask ourselves, okay, what new habits do we want to bring in? So if you're already a hands-on kind of parent, that's good. If you're not, this might be an invitation for you. When's the last time you really hugged your spouse for 20 seconds just to love them? When's the last time you really hugged and embraced your kids? Pats on the back, high fives with kids, with spouses, anything. Touch is so important. It's essential, and it's a very strong language of love. So making sure that touch is present, in a family. Has anyone in here heard of the 5 love languages before? Any 5 love language fans? I know Shazia has, yeah? Yeah, so okay. It's a really cool classic book at this point. It's sort of like everybody can use this book and figure out their spouse and their kids like 10 times better within like 5 minutes of taking a quiz. So 5 love languages, they have a website. But one of the things that, if I could like cut short for you, if you want to show love to your spouse and to your children or to your parents or whoever, look at the way they show you love. The way they show their love for you is often the way they will most understand the love you give them. So for example, if anyone in here have a mother who grew up with a mother who was always cooking and cleaning and serving, and she never sat down and was always making sure the family had stuff? Anybody have that mom? Okay, that's what he would call the act of sacrifice or act of service, love language. So the best way for that mom might not be flowers and I love yous. It's coming over and vacuuming her house without her asking, dusting, getting the groceries, filling up the gas in her car. Oh my God, you're the best child ever, right? If you have a spouse who's always texting you I love yous and you're great and complimenting you and writing you little notes and leaving you cards, right? Then that means that they would love if you would do that too. If you have a spouse who's always buying you gifts and giving you little things, or a friend and things like that, that means they would feel the most loved if you did it too. So that book is a really great reference. I would recommend checking it out. But ultimately, the way your kids or your spouses are giving you love is the way they'd love to receive it. So like my eldest, when she was little, she was always writing me notes. And actually my other daughter too, they're all note writers. Leaving me little cards, sitting under the door, putting them under the pillow, like all these things. So at one point I went, oh, okay, that's like how she expresses love. So I started writing little notes and I started leaving little things. And my teenage daughter to this day has all these little notes I wrote her when she was little. All the little notes and little tiny e-cards and different things, she has them saved. She hasn't thrown them away. So that's one of the ways I know that this really resonates with her. She still likes to write handwritten notes to her friends on special occasions. So look at the ways that people are showing you their love and give it back. 5 love languages. There's a cool quiz on their website you can take. It's really fun. I think this goes without saying, but eat meals together. And together, I think today has a different meaning. Together means not with the TV on. Together means not with the cell phones on the tables or in our pockets, but eat meals together. This is the age-old advice, but it still applies. There's a lot of families that don't actually eat meals together. And I understand we're all busy. Sometimes, especially here in Orange County, a lot of people are commuting really far distances for work. I know people eating dinners at 9:30 p.m. with their spouses and things like that. That's okay. Every day, maybe it's not going to happen. Once or twice a week, make it a goal. Because they say that, I mean, there's statistics not off the top of my head, I know them, but you know that drugs and violence and trouble for teenagers is significantly reduced for families that eat together. You guys can Google this stuff, right? But eating together is what kind of collects a family. It's why food is so important in most cultures, right? Because it's a way to gather people together. But make sure that you're eating together as a family without any distractions. Share interests and their interests. So maybe you don't like camping. You would do anything to avoid sleeping near mosquitoes, bugs, and creepy crawlies in the night. But you have a spouse who loves camping. You don't have to like it, but nothing says you can't get them a subscription to a magazine that's all about camping. Nothing says that for Eid you can't buy them a special lantern for when they like to go camping. Nothing says that you can't go, okay, we'll go camping one night and I'm bringing a mattress and, you know, getting a tent that you approve of. Take interest in their interests. You don't like basketball, your spouse likes basketball, that's okay. You know, buy them a shirt for their favorite basketball team. Just sit next to them while you do other work while they watch their game. You don't have to like the same things. Just share them. Same thing with your kids. Your kids have all kinds of interests. They're into dinosaurs. Okay, take interest in their dinosaurs. Talk to them about dinosaurs. Bring them a book from the library about dinosaurs. Take interest in the interests of the people around you. Number 10 is make dua for your family. It's interesting to find sometimes that people realize it's been a really long time since they made dua for their spouse or for their kids or for their family as a whole. And dua is the most important piece, an element that we have, the most important resource that's available to us as human beings, is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's in control of everything, not just for his help. Oh Allah, please change my spouse. Oh Allah, please change my spouse. But oh Allah, protect them. Oh Allah, bless them. Oh Allah, increase them in iman. Oh Allah, reward them for their good. Oh Allah, protect my children. Oh Allah, increase them in iman. Oh Allah, allow me to be a good parent to them. Allow me to be a good role model. Oh Allah, cover up my mistakes. Don't let my shortcomings hurt my children. Don't let my mistakes, harm my children. Dua is so important. So I feel like this is the best place in terms of tips for a loving family is always having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the picture. Right? And always asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always making dua, always turning to him consistently to help you become better and for your family to stay strong and to be blessed under his guidance. And that is it. Thank you. So we can do questions now. Discussion.
Has any questions? We can do it that way.
Yes, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I want to have you keep talking till the end of the day. That's how much I enjoyed it. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. You've mentioned earlier in the conversation that you sometimes as spouses or in our family members, we deal with things or relationships as transactions.
Yeah.
Like I'll do for you, and then what you're going to do for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I find myself doing that or
we all do.
receiving it.
We all do, yeah.
But I did find out that, or I kind of like found out the hard way. Like, when you said it, before you said it, I kind of knew the answer. I'm just gonna do me because that's who I am. But then how the other person receives it, it doesn't matter, you know. So I guess my question is, when you find yourself always in that, you know, situation where you're dealing with kind of like, it's a transaction. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your nuclear family. It could be with like other people. It's kind of hard to continue being that person that you're doing it for who you are, because at the end I felt like I would put myself in a bubble and kind of exclude myself from relationships because I don't want to deal that with, you know, like you would say to yourself, well, they're not worth my time, or they're not worth, I don't want to be with them, or, you know, just kind of give myself to my kids and that's it. So what would be your advice besides like, do you, because I still do me, I'm still not happy and satisfied, you know? It's not that I give you, you have to give me, but then, I don't know, is it because you mature and you think differently? And it's like you're at a point where it should be clear now that, you know, it's a give and take relationship. Like you said, love equals giving.
So first to clarify, when I said do you, it wasn't do you and have everybody accept it. I said like, in other words, be love and make that decision that's part of who you want to be, just to be clear, okay? But there are people, so let's talk about outside nuclear family. Let's talk outside family first. Let's go wider. Not everybody has earned a right to your love, okay? So we all have limited time. We all have a limited capacity. And so who you love and who you give the best of yourself to in terms of close relationships, okay? Those aren't for everybody. There are some people who you can give and give and give and give and give and give to, and they mistreat you, or they abuse you, or they take advantage of you, or they lie to you. So thank you, because I think I had that in my notes actually, and I forgot to say it. When you get to this place, it's not let me be afraid and stop being love and giving. It's let me learn life's lesson and know who to give it to. Okay? So on a communal level, we all have rights on each other. And on our community obligations, we give whether people like it or not, whether they're grateful. We all know that anyone who's ever been involved in volunteer work, like I always tell like the team when I volunteer at the Maghreb, if someone says thank you, that's like a bonus. But expect you're going to get nothing but complaints. So I think my event organizing friends and others understand this, right? If people say thank you, this was amazing, oh, mashallah. Most of the time you're going to get negative, 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 right? So on a communal level, whether people are nice or not, we still smile, we still say assalamu alaikum, we still show up, we still fulfill each other's rights because that's part of who we are. That's an obligation. But on a personal level now, we get to be a little bit more picky, and you should be. Okay? So
no guilt should be felt.
Huh?
When you're picky, no guilt should be felt. Like
I mean,
feel
there are
guilty.
so now there are some relationships you have to have. Certain members of your family, right, that you're obligated to keep in relationship with. But even then, right, Islam is very practical, right? Mental health and well-being is built into our religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never asks any of us to be doormats. He never asks us to tolerate being abused psychologically, physically, or emotionally. He never asks us to be oppressed people by choice. Okay? An oppressor in any capacity, whether that is as a parent, as a spouse, anything, anyone who's oppressive to somebody, that is a sin. And we're supposed to stop someone who's oppressive, right? We're supposed to stop them. We're supposed to prevent them. We're supposed to have an intervention to help them. But we are not supposed to force ourselves to continue to be taken advantage of or mistreated. So no, you don't have to. But let's say someone comes to me and they're married and they're saying, I feel like in my marriage I'm giving, 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 and my spouse isn't giving back. What do I do? That's where I have to have a conversation. That's where we have to kind of boil down and go, well, let's see what's going on. It's interesting. Sometimes the person who thinks they're giving the most has a very big blind spot on something really important that they've missed in a relationship with somebody. And other times, maybe the person's just not a good person. And they have to figure out how can they continue to give love, but without it developing resentment. Because when the resentment sets in, that's like the death of any healthy situation. So sometimes it's a matter of patience. It's a matter of I'm going to give, and I'm going to do the ihsan, and I'm going to continue to be my best, and it's not unhealthy for me, and I'm not going to be mentally disturbed, I'm not going to be resentful, I'm going to give fi sabilillah. Those are mature decisions that as adults we can make. But they have to be made in the right way. So for example, sometimes I'm working with a wife, we've done a lot of work together, but her husband is still a certain way, all right? He doesn't want to come and talk, whatever, okay. So she's usually come to me when she's ready to leave the marriage, and she's wavering back and forth trying to decide what to do. And she gets to a place where she's like, okay, certain things are maybe a little bit more tolerable, but these things haven't changed. So now she has a decision to make. Can she stay and give her best and understand and accept that this is how it's going to be? Because if she can do that, she can stay and she won't have resentment. She won't be angry. She won't be depressed. She won't be crying all the time. Because she'll say, look, I accept the situation as it is, and I'm not going to try to change it. I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to be my best. I'm going to do me. That's what she said. On the other side is, no, I can't accept this. I can't do this. I can't be mentally well. I can't be spiritually well. This is beyond my limit as a person. And that's where she decides she can't stay. Whichever path she chooses, she has to choose it maturely. She has to choose it wisely. She has to choose it understanding her limitations and what she's willing to do. Does that make sense? But remaining in a situation where one is depressed, feeling resentment towards people and things like that, and still giving, that's not healthy. So there has to be a space to kind of sit back and go, okay, hold on a second. Like, I really want meaningful relationships with people, but this particular individual continues to hurt me and disappoint me. Let me reevaluate what I can give. Let me talk about, are there some boundaries I need to put in place? Have I even told them what I really need? What would make you happy? What would make you feel better? Sometimes we talk a lot about, I'm sick of this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and it's like the bowl of fruit. What if it's like, look, there are 2 things that would make me feel amazing. Just 2. This and this. And they're both positive actions someone can take. It's interesting how fast that negativity can turn around. Right? If you come home, just spend 20 minutes with me before you do anything else. I just want to tell you about my day. And if you could please take the baby for a walk so I can have an hour to clean up the kitchen alone. Or stay home with the baby so I can go have a walk for an hour so I can be alone. 2 things. And that person feels 80% better. But when we're stuck in negativity, a lot of times it's because we have not articulated in a positive way the things that would make us feel better. So the other person doesn't know they're taking, not giving, because they don't even know what to do. You're always unhappy. You're never satisfied. Nothing's ever good enough for you because it's always about what's wrong. So if we flip it around and you think, what are the 2 things or the one thing that this person did would make you feel 80% better? And you ask that person, look, there's one thing. Despite everything else, if this happened, I would feel awesome. Who's going to be like, I don't care if you feel awesome, unless they're a really bad person? You understand? Like a spouse, whatever. They're going to be like, okay, how can I make you feel awesome? Thank God, what is it? You know? And if you boil it down to an action, and then they start doing it, right? I'll tell you something interesting when it comes to marital stuff. Specifically the women, they always say, if I have to tell my husband to do it, then it doesn't count. He should know what to do. And I've heard it from men too, but mostly the women. And I said, they're like, if I have to tell him that the one thing I need is to, go out one night a week just by myself or with some friends to just, get away from the kids, and for him to just put his stuff in the laundry basket, I don't know. She's like, if I have to tell him and he does it, it doesn't count because I want him to do it on his own. And I'm like, no. When you tell him what makes you happy, him doing it is because he loves you. He listened because he loves you. He can't do it if he doesn't know what to do. So it's really great when you give someone, I call it like a blueprint for your heart. Make it easy. Don't make people jump through all these hoops to figure you out, right? If you tell someone, this means a lot to me when you do this, and then you see them do it, they did it because they love you. That's when you're supposed to be like, awesome. Not like you only did it because I told you I wanted you to do it. Well, yeah, but they did it because they loved you, right? So just keep this in mind. Sometimes we expect people to be mind readers, okay? All right, next question. Parenting, anything, kids? Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your lecture. It was really amazing and eye-opening.
Alhamdulillah.
Quick question regarding the apology and being able to take responsibility for your mistake. In certain situation, in my experience, I have come across where I would apologize sincerely about whatever the wrong I have done. Maybe it's speaking out loudly or yelling or screaming or snapping. What happens when the other person do not show any empathy to that?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with that situation?
That's a great question. Thank you. So in that situation, when you apologize, it's not transactional. I apologize, so why aren't you giving back to me? That's not a real apology. And that's why it's a surface level apology. Because right away when they don't respond, you get angry all over again, I bet. Right? And then we're right back where we started, right? So when we go back to that first belief that love is giving, and you're giving to give, whether or not someone even ever accepts your apology in life, it is still your obligation to give it if you've wronged someone. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds us accountable. Because we have angels writing, right? And so that's part of tawbah, right? When we've done something wrong is also repairing anyone we've hurt or harmed. That's on us, whether anybody else ever accepts it from you or not. That's part of your obligation to someone else. That's part of you maintaining your character. That's part of your accountability for yourself to others and in front of Allah. But in a practical sense, okay, is when you're upset with someone and they come say sorry, there are some people who it's easy for them to let go when they hear that. Their heart is okay, they melt. But other people, they're still in their hurt. So just because I show up at this particular minute and I'm like, okay, I'm fine, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you, doesn't mean I get to expect from you that you're suddenly like, perfect, great, that's the right second, I was waiting for that to get over my anger, right? I might need an hour. Maybe I only need 15 minutes, right? Maybe I'm not ready for your apology, but I heard you, right? I heard you. I heard your voice. Your voice was loving. Your voice was kind. Your voice was remorseful. I heard you. But give me a little time. Give me a little time for it to sink in. Say you're sorry, deposit to me, and then give me space, if that's the person that I am, right? And that sorry will slowly settle into the heart, and one of two things will happen. Either your sorry isn't enough because that person doesn't feel validated yet. They don't feel understood yet. And there needs to be a conversation. Or on the other side, right, is a struggle to be vulnerable and to accept it because the ego is just still there trying to guard the heart. Both of these need some patience. But for a lot of people, it's just, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I snapped at you. That was disrespectful. I shouldn't have done that. Later, and sometimes we have a context. Contexts, by the way, are not excuses for poor behavior, okay? You don't get to say, I yelled at you and justify it, but context helps us understand what's going on inside, just so we're clear, okay? You never get to blame your poor behavior on something else, because again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds us accountable, okay? But context, especially in a relationship, matters. I'm sorry that I yelled at you, that was really disrespectful. I'm drop dead exhausted, and I think I'm not thinking clearly. I'm going to leave you to yourself right now. Take some time. And that's it. And I think later, things should move forward. Now, if you've said sorry for something you did wrong, but the other person also said something that hurt you, now you're in a situation where you're waiting also for them to acknowledge their hurt that they've caused you. Okay, but these are two different pieces. And so I would say a little bit of patience, give some space, and see how it comes back to you. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. How are we on time, by the way?
Good.
Yeah, a few more minutes, okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, if nobody else wants the mic, go for it.
Sorry, I promise this is to make it clear for everybody. So what if you sometimes deal with a situation where the other person acts like their priority in everything? If they're upset, their priority. If they had a hard day, their priority. If they're hungry, their priority. Their priority in everything, but you're not allowed that space to feel priority. And then when you do, it's like, why are you mad? Why are you tired? What did you do all day? So you have to validate their feelings 24/7 and accommodate to them. And let's say if they're having a problem and they need an ear, and you just sit there and you listen and you actually give advice. And then during the day you check on them. But then you ran into a very similar situation and you need that. Not you want it, you need it. But it's not given again. And you kind of deal with that.
Do you ask for that specifically? I had a really rough day. I need an ear to think out loud, and I'd love to get your input after I tell you the story. Okay.
Yes.
And what's the general response?
So would it be? It would be kind of like the person, I don't like confrontation. I don't like.
No, you're not. No, but that's what you're talking about them.
Right.
Talking about you had a long day, you had a problem, and you want an ear to listen, and I want to talk about it, and I want to get your insight. Can we sit for 20 minutes on the couch, and I can tell you about what happened today?
Yeah, and I would get that.
Oh, wait.
I would.
Oh, you would?
I would.
Good. Step
But
one.
no feedback, kind of like very simple. It's like, but didn't help me.
Okay, now hold on. People aren't trained counselors. So what's most important for you in that moment? To have someone listening and giving you support and an ear? Or are you looking for professional advice?
To be quite honest?
Yes.
Both.
Okay. So sometimes you have to know and respect a person's limitations. And by the way, the advice they give you may be literally what they think is the best advice.